Hello, lovely violas. I'm talking to you from the virtual Benedetti sessions, and this is going to be another tutorial on Tchaikovsky's Souvenir de Florence, the last movement. This time we're going to just focus on letter E to where the fugue begins, and then we'll jump to the coda at the end, which is the più vivace just before letter U. And I would really urge you guys, now that it's all up, to go and watch the first 15 minutes of Nikki's first tutorial video about this Tchaikovsky, because she covers in great detail some really important things about her understanding, her feeling of the structure of the piece. And what's particularly lovely about the way she says it is that she kind of encourages everyone to come up with their own feelings and stories behind the structure, and that's so important, to have as strong a picture, as strong a feeling for every part of this piece as possible. Because let's face it, we're on our own. In reality, we would be either playing in a sextet or in a huge ensemble doing this. And so the more we can imagine those things and imagine the colours, the characters, and make it as enriching a musical experience for ourselves as possible, the better. So, just to quickly think then where we are at letter E. We've just come out of this most glorious chordal, sort of multi-technicolor version of the second subject that we got at the C major double bar just before C. And now we've kind of hit another wall. You'll hopefully have remembered, or you can see in your parts, that just after letter D we get this G, this like long G, where suddenly from out of all of this array of textures and sounds, we just get stuck with this one note, which is just like an extraordinary moment. It's just time stands still. And here we have another one at letter E, now this time on a D flat. And it's a kind of chance just to reset, just to kind of allow the core temperature to get a little lower. And we get back to this theme from the very beginning again. To me, there's something incredibly like transitional about this music. It's just taking us to the next thing. So we need to have our ears wide open, even though there's nothing to hear in our own personal practice rooms. We have to hear in our minds what else is happening in the music. We need to use, technically speaking, as little bow as we possibly can, and keep it as like alive as those pixies that I loved back before letter A. Do you remember how I love this? All that stuff. It's exactly that character, but now in like the upside down, if any of you have seen Stranger Things. It's like the same but different. So and that is a fabulous swell, a really fast and zippy swell to sforzando, and then right back down again to pianissimo. So really think of your bow control, bow speed, vibrato, anything you can possibly harness to get that as like in and out as you possibly can. Great. Now, just going on, this bit is always really hilarious if you're sight reading it, because people can never get the page over fast enough. So that those like 4 pianissimo bars and just basically never played. So I would very much recommend you guys photocopying the music as you need so that you can actually play that stuff. Very nice to hear. So stating the obvious, but let's really listen to the intonation of this stuff, because it's kind of funky. And just make sure we're playing all the right accidentals. And not only that, but we need to change at the speed of light from a kind of background creepy thing to this much more zingy foreground voice. Because that's a piece of the tune, isn't it? So we need to be really conscious of our different roles here. And then we sort of sink back into the undergrowth, as it were. But always with this sense of forward motion and sort of a lightness in the sound that means other kind of more interesting things can actually be heard. We adjust the adders of tension and anticipation. And we want to basically be grading that crescendo and enjoying the forte so much, but not so much that it detracts from the power of our fortissimo at letter F. So at F we have this really fun stuff that I love doing. It's scrubbing away. All this kind of stuff. Use totally flat hairs. I think that as much crunch and crackle as you possibly can will really sound amazing in the context. And always propel yourself to the next one. They shouldn't really stand alone as separate sort of separate things. It's all part of a great big long, it's an 8-bar phrase, all the way to the D minor rendition that we get of, it's once again of the original theme of that double bar, which is like, it's grandeur, but it's also something quite ferocious about it, I find. It's so desperate and like where everyone's making as much noise as they possibly can. And with all these double notes, or the semiquavers that we get, there's something quite frenetic about it, all this like extra scrub. So we need to get, in spite of that, a lot of noise, still the lightness of the theme and this kind of extraordinary energy that comes with all of that. So in order to do that, she says, I think the thing to do is practice it, first of all, perhaps slowly. So let's take it all apart. We want fabulous intonation. We want fabulous line. It needs to sound like music. We also want as much power from our right arms as possible. So I would first of all practice it just in single notes. This kind of thing, all the way through. Particularly when we get to these chords. Or whatever they are. Really think about how you're spreading the chords and listening to the intonation in your octaves. The next thing I would do is to play it a little faster. But kind of feel in a heightened way the shape that you want to make. And be conscious of how we're using our bows and our bodies to create those things. So that's like the phrasing conscious version. And then finally, we'll add all of the scrub and all of the frenetic energy. So then we marry it all together. Because what we don't want is any of those things without its two partners, okay? So we want the beautiful intonation, we want the phrasing and the musical intention, and we want the scrub, noise and energy, okay? That's amazing. Now, it kind of, again, crashes into a wall, but it's like another wall of the upside down. When we get to letter G, when we get back to this same material, there is something so kind of foreboding and creepy about this, I find. It's pernickety, and I think it's at the second cellos that have this really cool rhythmical drive. Always look at the score, by the way, particularly now since we're all on our own. Really good idea to know what's going on around you. Again, stating the obvious. But let's use, again, very little bow. And even though there aren't actually accents on those octaves, I would definitely ping them out a bit because they're so cool. I mean, that's not really a musical reason to do anything, let's face it. And then we're back to where we were. Then it's the same material, but just before we get to letter H, this is actually, I think, maybe the hardest thing in the whole piece to do. We have to be so amazingly nimble with our bows that we can change from forte to piano on the drop of a hat. I mean, on the drop of a bloody, I don't know, piece of thread. There is no time. So... if you do it in slow motion, you can really just think about how you're making the sound. So just think loads of bow in the forte and then think no bow in the piano. So let's try that a little faster. 1 and... I can totally notice that it's easier to do up, down, up for the quiet than it is down, up, down. The down, up, down ones are like 15 times harder. So let's just be super, let's just practice then perhaps the down, up, downs. It's because we're so used to using the tip of our bow to make less noise. And here what we have to do is actually do the total opposite and make more noise when we're further away from the heel and less when we're near it. So just I would say lighten it off as much as you can. If there's a little bumps and crackles, it doesn't matter, because we're going to be playing with hopefully 4,000 other viola players across the world. So that is a fabulous thing to look into, just bow control. And then we are launched into this fugue, which is so great. It's, well, actually, I'm not going to talk to you about that now. We'll save that for the next video. As planned, I'm going to now just talk about the coda to finish things off with for today. Now, if you guys could just look to the più vivace just before letter U. This will go up a few notches. This piece is already pretty fast. Nikki likes it at a really kind of swift tempo, which is fantastic. It's a lot of fun, and we have to always keep our sound really nimble and light and moving. But at the più vivace, it goes even faster, and what we have to hear are the cellos that have this constant quavers. If you just hear those, you can just latch in and off we go, no problem. What we want is just to practice it nice and slowly for intonation first. He's helpfully put in some double stops for us to even help with that intonation. So we can always check it with our open Ds. That kind of thing. Just practice it, obviously, 1,000 times more slowly than I just demonstrated then. And just from the way it's written, it kind of gets squeezed through a keyhole, where at letter U it becomes sort of double speed. Think about with this stuff how we actually want to hear more of those chordal intervals, okay? So unlike with the beginning of the più vivace, where we're really using nice off the string, like bananas, like how we talked about in the other video, in and out of the string for as much resonance as possible. Here at U, we're kind of combining that with a little bit more on the string, just to get even more of that amazing friction in the chords that we get to play. And then, surprise, this bit just reminds me of something cleaning its teeth. It's like, that's what goes through my mind in that bit. So we want it to be really concise. Just let's think about where in the bow we're going to be. So lower middle half, just lower half. Loads of hairs on the bow. Think about the resonance of how we let our bow off the string. And all of that stuff has to have a constant forward motion. As with so much of this music, it is just constantly building and falling. Actually building and then like running into a brick wall often as well. Here we just need the tension to increase and increase and increase and be as exciting as possible. Now, when we get to this F, 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 as if you weren't playing loudly enough already, let's just use as much bow and as much release as we possibly can. So viola's up, it's really comfortable. If you're standing, you want feet shoulder width apart, think of your posture, think how we could possibly enhance the sounds we're making. If you're sitting down, let's make sure that we're sitting really well on our feet on the floor properly. We're holding our violas up with great stature. Bowing would help here actually. Up. And if you're kind of playing a harmonic there, that's fine. I think that's kind of great actually. For the very end, as much release with your bow, as much precision on those chords. We don't want them to be so crunchy that you can't actually hear the notes. We still want to hear all three notes of the chord, but with a lot of release, a lot of ping in the sound. And to finish, we've got those three fabulous F sharps. Bum, bum, bum. And the last one has to have a really explosive upwards feeling, so they're not all equal, right? So we can actually use our bodies, our kind of body language, but also the physicality of moving our instruments up a little bit to just give even more burst and ping against the bows. So just try that. Try moving your viola up as you play one of those F sharps, and just experiment with how those movements can affect the exuberance of your sound. Obviously not so much that you lose all bow contact or, you know, all that kind of important stuff too, but worth experimenting with. So I think that is it for today. Your next instalment will cover the fugue and all the bits up until where we just got to here at the coda. I would just encourage you, as always, to listen to lots of different recordings, have a real sense of the speed that we will be going at. So listen as well to the Play Along With Us video on YouTube. Work it up slowly. And as Nikki was saying over and over again, play with a listening sound. So keep it transparent where possible. Always the kind of sound that you can really hear your intonation, as well as the fleet of everything that's moving, and the kind of constant flow. That is it from me. Thank you, everyone. Bye.